So it's currently not race week. Pain. Next week is race week, but it's at 4 a.m. for me. Even more pain. So, shoot, you know what? Let's just grade the seasons of one of the drivers. And I landed on Bottas because last season was probably his last season in F1, so I felt like this made the most sense. And before we start today's video, I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. The goal is by June. But that's probably not the case anymore, so let's try and get at least 200 on Instagram. So you can see here we have all of Bottas cars here. I know it might get confusing between these, but I remember not the hards, the mediums. This is mediums. The mediums here is 2015, the softs here is 2016, in case any of you get confused. Anyways, let's start off with the man's rookie season, 2013. I mean, what more can you do with that, Williams? Only 4 points. He scored more than Pastor Maldonado, who only scored 1. And both of their points were scored over one race, so maybe it was circumstantial. I don't know. What else can I give this? This is like the most mid-season of all time. His rookie season, I don't know. I guess D. I mean, he has some pretty underrated bangers here, so yeah, D is fair. 2014 is when Valtteri Bottas started to make a pretty big name for himself, finishing P4 in the championship ahead of 2 world champions. And one of them had a better car than him. Well, to be fair, to Vettel fans, 2014 is like a blur. They don't count it. It's like LeBron 2011. This does not count. And he demolished his teammate Felipe Massa by 50 points. I think you can call this a pretty good year. He had a stretch where he scored 3 podiums in a row. Maybe he could have got one in Hungary, but that Hungary race was absolutely insane. Freaking Fernando Alonso could have won that race. Could have been a 5 in a row podium stretch, but 3 in a row is still pretty decent. I think a lot of people consider this as Bottas' best. Do I consider that as his best? Well, not really. I think we all know what we consider as Bottas' best, but it's his breakout year as a solid driver. I'm gonna have to give it the A tier. But we also have to consider how unlucky Felipe Massa was in 2014. Canada, Britain causing a red flag. Germany lap 1 with Kevin Magnussen. I do think that was Kevin's fault. I mean, come on, he's taking this corner deep when it's supposed to be a swooping right corner. I mean, maybe Felipe could have scored more than Bottas, but I will still say Bottas was better than him that year. And their head-to-head was only 10-9, so yeah, if you put it that way, was this really that great of a season? You know, I'm still gonna keep it an A tier. Bottas was decent. 2015. Williams were less competitive in 2015 with considerably less amount of podiums, and the generational strategical fumble at the British Grand Prix, I still think they could have got P2 and P3 in that race, not necessarily winning it, but a decent result at least. And shoot, Bottas had another podium miss out the Russian Grand Prix thanks to Kimi Räikkönen, and one of my favorite radio messages of all time. Last lap, Kimi, all or nothing. But his head-to-head with Felipe was slightly worse. They were drawn at 9-9. Yeah, this wasn't that great of a season for Williams. But as I said earlier, Bottas had a lot of unlucky moments throughout 2015. I remember one of them now. The Belgian Grand Prix, in a pit stop, Williams put him on the soft, but one of the tires, I think was like the rear right, was on the mediums. Wow, okay. I don't think this was that great of a year. 2015 is the medium tire. So, B tier. 2016, this was not a great year for Williams. They were only P8 and P11, and Bottas' only podium finish came at the Canadian Grand Prix. Although that being said, Williams' straight line speed was lethal in 2016. Williams and Force India. I mean, if you have an engine that powerful with its 0 downforce, of course it's going to be very fast on the straight. And if you look at the head-to-head, it's still decently close. I'm actually surprised Bottas isn't running away with this. I thought he would be on average like 5 times ahead of Massa, but his most was 3. But his qualifying, yeah, Bottas it's always been like this. Bottas is a monster in qualifying, but his race pace isn't the greatest. But 2016 wasn't really that great for Bottas. Wasn't great for Williams in general. You can slowly see them starting to fall, although they're slowly coming up again. Trust me, Williams will get a podium by next season. And I'll also be invited to the paddock by them, okay? Not his best, had better seasons. Is it worse than 2015? I think he performed to the standards of that car, so I might just have to put it in the B tier. You know what? No, I'm gonna put it in the C tier. There are much better seasons down here. In the winter of 2016, right after the FIA awards giving ceremony, Nico Rosberg announces a retirement from F1. And there are many considerations for that seat. Pascal Wehrlein was who I thought was going to replace him because he was the Mercedes junior on the grid. Alonso was also considered. Wehrlein and Alonso were like my two candidates to join Mercedes. But I completely forgot to consider Bottas, who was probably the most obvious choice from the start. They didn't want a potential talent. Pascal Wehrlein could have developed pretty quickly if he went to Mercedes and not Sauber. Fernando Alonso, this probably wouldn't have gone well. They want a clear number 1 and clear number 2 driver, which makes sense, so they picked Valtteri Bottas. And Bottas was pretty solid in his first season with Mercedes. He got his first podium with them in their first race and his first pole position with them in his third race, though he only finished P3. Got his first win with Mercedes in his fourth race. He had 3 wins over the course of the season. There's an amazing start in Austria. And he wasn't that far off Sebastian Vettel, who had a terrible second half to the season. Overall, he did what he needed to do in that Mercedes and that second seat. He was a great number 2 to Lewis Hamilton. He would be there to challenge the Ferraris at time. This was a really solid season from Valtteri Bottas. I am going to have to put this in the A tier as well. Is that the right car? Yeah, that is the right car. The W09 is beside it over there. And next we have 2018. Whatever you thought of 2017... only in reverse. He finished P5, and if the championship was a lot closer, he might have let Lewis Hamilton down. Just look at this thumbnail from WTF1 back at the 2018 Canadian Grand Prix. Look at that as well. Lewis had a pretty bad Canadian Grand Prix, I will admit that, but it was still his best season. It was just an off weekend. I like how easily people forget how good of a driver you are from one very, very off weekend, and Bottas had probably his best weekend of the season. All the other ones were pretty terrible. I mean, sure, he had two missed opportunities, both of them not his fault. In Baku, he ran over debris. In Russia, he was told to move over Barrichello style. In Germany, he was told to hold off Lewis Hamilton, but I will say this, I think even if Mercedes didn't tell him to hold position, he still would have finished P2, because look at the gap by the end of the race. Lewis' tires were in the perfect operating window. And I remember in the final race of the season, he was getting torched by Verstappen and Vettel, and he finished P4, which would have been an easy P2 or possibly even a win. And his head-to-head with Lewis, oh my gosh, oh wow. I think, pretty safe to say, D tier. And even Bottas agrees that 2018 was his worst season, because this caused him to go on vacation to South America and not talk to anyone until the 2019 season, when he went out with a bang in the first race. As we move on to 2019, people were considering Bottas a serious title threat to Lewis Hamilton. He was pretty close up until the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but after that, it was the Lewis Hamilton season. And look at that, he didn't finish 100 points behind Lewis this time. And he got his most wins in a single season of 4. Although as much as I'm praising Bottas for his performances in 2019 now, I will say there were some points of the season where you know he should have been there, but he just wasn't. Like I remember one of them was Hungary. Where on earth was he? It was like, I think he got lapped even in that race. Yes, he did get a puncture, but I don't know, it was still pretty disappointing. I think he could have at least climbed back to P5. And Bottas and Lewis did have a great battle in Britain. I enjoyed that battle. That was a good battle. That was fun racing. And you know all those people who say Bottas could have won a championship with Mercedes if they never used team orders? Come on, be serious with yourselves. And secondly, 2019 proved that this isn't the case, because Bottas and Lewis were each other's championship rivals. Look what happens. And there wasn't a single use of team orders throughout the season, apart from Singapore. So, yeah, I don't know. For Bottas standards, this was his best season ever. We're going to put this in the S tier. I think it's only fair. And next we have 2020. He almost finished behind Max Verstappen, who had the second fastest car, while he had the fastest F1 car of all time. B tier. It wasn't great. He only won 2 races, which was the first race in Austria, and then the Russian Grand Prix. He was unlucky in some. I remember the Nürburgring. In Imola, he was unlucky with the VSC. He probably could have won that race. And in Sakir, yes, he was unlucky with the pit stop, but then How was he losing so many positions to the end of the race? Where was he in the Italian Grand Prix? Mans was nowhere to be seen. The final race of the season, where was he? Why wasn't he putting a challenge to Verstappen? Lewis was understandable. He just missed the previous race weekend due to COVID. Bottas wasn't. I don't know. This wasn't a great season from Bottas. And Max was unlucky. A lot of points throughout the seasons. You know, all the Italian races, just blowing his car up. And the Honda being as reliable as the 2015 Honda engine. So, B tier maybe. Do I think C? Do I think it's as bad as 2016? I don't think so. I do think it could have been better. I think it's like in the middle of these two. So it's like a low B tier, high C tier. Next we have 2021. I will die on this hill. A lot of people say that Perez was the better number 2 driver than Bottas in 2021. And I agree. He was there in the crucial points of the championship while Bottas was trundling along when Perez was up there. But I will say this. Bottas was still the better driver than Perez in 2021. Because Perez wouldn't be there a lot of the times. He would miss Q3 sometimes, whereas Bottas makes Q3 every time in the Mercedes. And he also won a race on merit. Perez's win wasn't on merit. And if it's not a random midfield driver finishing on the podium, you know it's Valtteri Bottas and not Sergio Perez. And as I said in that video, Perez will block off Lewis Hamilton at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix when Valtteri Bottas was trundling in P7. And again, Bottas' job is to be a number 2 driver. He did not do that job well towards the end of the season, and also the Imola crash. But still, I do think he was a better driver than he was in 2020, so we're gonna move 2020 down to the C, and we're gonna move 2021 up to the B. 2021 was Valtteri Bottas' last season with Mercedes. It was a pretty decent tenure for a number 2 driver. I certainly think he was faster than Rubens Barrichello in the prime Schumacher days, and he makes way for George Russell by moving to Alfa Romeo. And this is the first time since 2016 since we've seen Valtteri Bottas have his own team. So how did he fare? Pretty damn good. Starting off his Alfa Romeo tenure, finishing P6 at the Bahrain Grand Prix. And by the Canadian Grand Prix, he was P8 in the championship, only 4 points behind Lando Norris. So you thought maybe he could potentially challenge Lando. And by the end of the season, he finished P10, scoring less than 50 points. In fact, he only scored 3 points since the Canadian Grand Prix. Alfa Romeo completely dropped the bomb in their second half. To be fair, it was the same story with Haas, who had a great first half and a terrible second half. Aston Martin were quite the opposite though. McLaren were also the opposite of that. A lot of people agree with this. 2022 was a great season from Valtteri. I would have to put this in the A tier because, yes, it's not his fault that Alfa Romeo fell off through the second half of the season. Some people might put this in S tier, but I don't think it's as good as 2019. And you also can't really tell if a driver is great or not with a crap car. You can look at his head-to-head with Zhou Guanyu, but Zhou Guanyu was in his rookie season in 2024, so you can't really make a fair judgment from that. So 2022 is in the A tier, and the 2 seasons left is 2023 and 2024, although I'm pretty sure that's the 2022 cough. I made a mistake. And I don't know, they're both going in the C tier. They were 2 pretty similar seasons, and he did the most what he could with that car. Although he was pretty unlucky in Qatar last year, this is Liam Lawson's fault. Could have potentially scored points, but finished P11 while Zhou Guanyu finished P8. If you look at the head-to-head with Zhou Guanyu, he was a lot better. And I feel like there are probably some missed opportunities here and there. Qualifying P10 at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the race pace couldn't save them, and he smashes into Kevin Magnussen, which was a pretty dumb incident. I hope that wasn't the last we see of Bottas in F1, especially with Cadillac coming in. The dream scenario for me would be Bottas with Colton Herta. Please make that happen, Caddy. That's a tier list. That's all of Valtteri Bottas seasons in a tier list. Let me know what you think of these picks. Maybe you'll make your own opinion. Maybe you'll make your own tier list. I'll leave this in the link in the description. And Bottas has some pretty consistent opinions online. So if there's people disagreeing with some, then I don't know. Maybe I'm just dumb. I think I'm dumb, but the day is done. Maybe just happy. So yeah, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.